Thank you very much, Harold. I think I'm gonna hire Harold to give that whole speech on my wedding because it's so nice. I almost felt like a guest of honor of something important. Thank you very much, guys, for having me here tonight. I am very much honored and very much African, and I know I sound African. This is not up for debate. I don't know what you think, but I don't care. I know what I sound like. I don't care. Harold and propaganda, no ways. We're going to vote on this at the end of the session. Great stuff. So I have had the honor of doing both public speaking and debating. And I think the first thing top of my head for the session is to just offer clarity. Public speaking adjudication is nothing like debate adjudication. So if you have debated before, or if you have adjudicated debating before, I need you to take all that great knowledge and put it aside, because we're going to give you mindgasms. Yeah, we're going to give you mindgasms, and we're going to teach you to view adjudication in a totally different way. So prepare to be mind blown. Great stuff. So the first thing I want to say, this clarity is going to be very much important, because a lot of times people that have been seasoned debaters or seasoned debate adjudicators tend to want to use the same manual to adjudicate public speaking, and this is by far different. The second thing then that I want to have clarity on is to tell you that we do not have immediate conclusions in public speaking. Immediate conclusions means, oh my gosh, she is black, yet she sounds Indian. Definitely means this is AI. So I'm going to completely disregard that speech. We don't have that. We do not have that in public speaking. And we don't have our sessions to say, if the speech task is set for 6 minutes and the speaker speaks for 3 minutes, it ultimately just disqualifies that speaker from nice things. Public speaking doesn't do that. We don't have that. We still offer the same liberty to all speakers. The third thing then is to say that in public speaking, just a second. Hello? Okay, I'm so sorry about that. Great. Let me just continue where I left off. The third thing then is to say we do not have zero speeches. We don't have a zero speech in public speaking. A zero speech to us in public speaking is equivalent to someone who never showed up. And as long as the person comes to the tournament, they bath, they come on stage and they breathe, they get a mark. So if I come here and at best, the only thing I said is, hi guys, there is a minimum mark that I ought to be given. I cannot be given a zero. For the life of public speaking, you cannot do that. You cannot disregard the fact that someone bathed and came to a tournament and stood in front of you. Even if they breathe and faint, they need to be given the minimum, not a zero. We reward effort in public speaking. We love effort. So we don't have those charts. The only person you can ever give a zero in your life is a person that just didn't show up. The next thing then, I think this sort of clarity is going to allow the tournament, it's going to allow us to have the session better, because once understand what public speaking then means in terms of education. I think the final thing I want to say is, for me specifically, if you're to attend a tournament judged by me, facilitated by me, specifically, I'm not sure for other CAP members, policy looks like with the I generated material. I'm a person who values authenticity. I'm a person who values creativity, and I'm a person who values people of integrity. So if you're not an authentic being, if you have difficulties being creative, if you have difficulties using your own brain, to the extent that you begin to use AI generated speeches, I have a policy to say those are the individuals to disqualify from the tournament. Those are the individuals to give zeros to because they go against the integrity of the sport. However, this is something that is like very subjective because different CAP members have different ways of dealing with these particular issues. So I just want to say it top of my head that this is something that you are most likely to encounter at a public speaking tournament, and you ought then to communicate with the judges. You ought then to communicate with the judges or to communicate CAP at that tournament and just be inquisitive about what their policy with regards to AI generated material is, so that they just have like clarity on that. So yeah. So I also get this question, how do you know that the speaker is using AI generated material? How can you tell that this is AI generated material? I think in the technological age, we've all been well vexed to understanding AI generated material or AI trigger words. So if you see a speaker and you notice a lot of words such as tapestry and all the like, you can then conclude, maybe with confirmation from other speakers from other judges, that this material may be AI generated. So I think in terms of that confirmation, that does away with that question. Because this is something I'm likely to be asked. Now, let's move on to the more interesting parts. Let's talk about being a human being and how to handle deliberations. I know this is so crazy. I'm starting at the bottom of the barrel, but let's talk about it, guys. We are all opinionated individuals. I actually have an opinion. I actually may think that a certain speaker is so good. And then Harold says, no, this is a 60s speaker. I'm like, no, what do you mean? But what do you mean 60s? Did you listen to that speech? This is the best speech I've ever had in my life. I literally had a mindgasm when I was listening to this speech. What do you mean this is a 60s speech? So this all boils down to handling deliberation. What kind of a person are you when handling deliberation? I think this is a point where you can actually borrow from your debate knowledge. The first thing is that you need to understand that how you may have heard a speaker is not the same way other judges may have heard the same speaker. The first, you don't go to war. You don't be like, oh my gosh, what do you mean you didn't hear that speech? That was the best speech. No. You calmly explain parts and bits of that speech that you liked and why you ranked them above. I think I'm going to give you like the whole score sheet of what we actually look at so that you have the jargon, so that you sound intelligent. Because when you say, oh my gosh, she spoke to my heart, you don't sound like the person that we actually want to listen to in a deliberation. There's a jargon for it. I think the content of the speech was addressing the task. It makes you sound intelligent, but also it means that you have a template that we ought to be working with. I think this is also important. But the reason I'm going to start with handling deliberation first and foremost is because a lot of individuals have great ideas. They're great judges, but they fail to talk about these ideas with other adjudicators, right? The second here is for you to make sure that within those deliberations, you remain a very objective person. This is to say, I'm from Zimbabwe, and if there's a Zimbabwean speaker, I should not have preferential biases to say, oh my gosh, she has the same last name as my mom, so I should prefer her over other speakers. I think bias can also go beyond just having the same last name, to be from the same region, to even sounding the same. Like, there is a certain quotation that you may like for example, Lyot's who says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And you feel the need to say, oh my gosh, this is my favorite quotation. and it takes away from your objectivity because of your preferential bias that you already have pertaining that particular quotation. I think this is also something that you need to understand when it comes to biases. So it is very much important to sit in the position of an objective onlooker and see if they actually convinced you and see if they actually gave you mindgasms when it came to their idea. The third thing then is to make sure, like, especially this is going to apply especially in instances where you are chairing. When you are chairing, there's a time that is allocated to that room. They've allocated 15 minutes for you guys to come up with a decision. In that 15 minutes, if you have 3 people with you on panel, the first thing is to ask for their initial call, give them 2 minutes to give you justifications. If you see that you guys are going way above the 15-minute allocated mark that you guys ought to deliberate within, you need to then make sure as chair that you call the decision to a vote. In most tournaments, they're going to tell you the chair has 2 decisions, or the panelists have 1 decision. If they have, if it's a chair and 2 panelists, it means the chair has 1 decision and the rest, everyone has 1 decision. But if it's a chair and a panelist, it means the chair has a double decision and all that. These pertain to different tournaments. But the most important thing is to make sure that you are time conscious then. Why is this important? Judges delay tournaments. When judges delay tournaments, KEP gets upset. When KEP is upset at you as a judge for delaying the tournament, chances of breaking, breaking lifts the chart. So if you wish to break, this is going to be very helpful. In addition to being a good judge means that you are very good at handling deliberation, and handling deliberations entails being able to manage time. The final thing, guys, this is so crucial. There's a lot of great public speakers, a lot of great debate judges that I know that have been called out and removed from actually hosting tournaments or actually participating in tournaments because of how they address others. I would mention examples, but I don't want to, I don't want those people in my DMs. I was going to tell you names. So if you find time and you come to my DMs, I'll tell you names. There are people that have been banned from these tournaments because of the inability to communicate with others, the inability to use a respectful tone, the inability to engage with others in a respectful manner. Like, this is particularly important because if you can respect others, it means you can also respect yourself. So no matter how upset you become at a certain decision, it is very much important to take your anger management classes. Drink your anger management pills, because why are you shouting? It's not that deep. You don't even know the speaker. You don't have to embarrass yourself so much trying to defend them hell and back. It's literally keep your cool. Be calm. Be calm. Guys, I won't tell you how many speakers I've let go to the guillotine and be hanged. And, I've let a lot of speakers take the fall when I knew that this was a good speaker, because I had to remain respectful. I had to remain within the bounds of respecting other people. And I like people that respect other people. And I think respect is very, very much important. Imagine I'm taking you through a whole session of how to be a human being, because this is practically it. This is practically how to be a human being 101. We are not even yet at the gist of public speaking. I just want to allude then that being a human being and being a well-cultured being extends into all other spaces. Be humane. Where I come from in Southern Africa, they call it Ubuntu. Have Ubuntu. You know what, Zinza, as a person, guard yourself, treat yourself with respect, deliberate with respect. It's going to be so much important. I know people are like, oh my gosh, not this girl taking 20 minutes telling us how to be humans. Yes, I'm going to tell you how to be a human being before I tell you the judging metrics, because the only way you can be a good judge is if you are a good human being and you have manners. This is particularly important, guys. If you know that your manners are in the wrong place, you can't deliberate with others, even if you know the manual, because you're going to be like, guys, but the content was bad. But because you used a terrible you use terrible language to persuade people about the content, they are not going to get where you are coming from. So etiquette is very much important. I like respectable adjudicators. I like people that hold themselves with respect. And honestly, as an adjudicator in both public speaking and debate, there is not one tab where I have not broken, because that's the guarding essential is for you to treat people like human beings. You do not have to be a kiss ass. Oh my gosh, for lack of a better word, it's not profanity, but you don't have to kiss everybody's behind for you to get ahead, but you have to interact with people respectively and respectably, because people that respect others get in the chat for nice things. I would not be in the chat for hosting this session if I hadn't been interacting with people in a respectful manner. I know a lot of people with far much bigger CVs than me, but that have a problem with communicating with others. And the only way you can be a grounded, good judge is if you don't have communication problems. I think we are done with that component. Let's move on to, I know people with good manners are dying inside to tell me that let's move on to the things that we joined the call for. Yes. Great stuff. Let's go into the judging metrics. Yay! So I'm not going to dwell much on percentages, but I'm just going to summarize components of public speaking that adjudicators should look out for. This is going to make you sound intelligent. This is going to make your argument sound grounded. This is going to put you up there in the chat for nice things. This is going to make sure that when you speak in deliberations, other judges actually listen. Okay? The first thing is content quality. I don't know if you're writing that down, you can write, it's not a big deal. I'm sure you're going to have these slides. Harold, they're going to have these slides, right? Yeah, just make sure they get these slides. They seem very nice. You guys seem like nice people. So the first thing is the quality of your content. The quality of a speaker's content refers to the clarity in their message. Was their message clear and easy to understand? Was their speech relevant in terms of content that the motion or that the task asked for? Did it have depth? Did the speaker provide insightful information and arguments? This is part of the content. How good was this content? How deep was it? How much did it address the topic? How relevant was it to the topic? How convincing was it in as far as the topic is concerned? That is content. Now, if you are me, you would give that 30%. Again, I'm going to say that these scores do not pertain to all tournaments. A lot of tournaments will have their own percentages of how to rate content, but depending on whatever score sheet that you have been given, when you are in deliberation, this is something that you can bring up when defending a speaker. You don't go, OMG, you need to give Patience the high mark because Patience was so audible. Patience is from Uganda, so Patience is my homie. We don't do that over here. We tell people things such as Patience content was addressing the topic. Patient's content or the content of Patient's speech was in depth. It was deep. It had it was so relevant to the topic that was given. It was so near to solving the problem that the topic has created. That is, if there is a problem, it was so convincing to the average person listening to it in its call to action. That is, if there was a call to action. This is very much important and paramount then for you to use. The second item is delivery. Content and delivery is different. When you look at these components of the speech, I want you to look at them independently, because you will realize someone may have a very good content, but they may suck at delivering that content. This does not mean this person is so terrible. No. It just means they have delivery problems. Probably they can think, they can write. They are not yet good at expressing that very content to the extent that it convinces adjudicators. So the second thing is delivery. Let's talk about delivery. Before I move on to delivery, I have been rumored to speak very, very fast. And now I'm not sure. Can everybody hear me clearly? Am I speaking fast? Great stuff. Thank you, patience. I know you were listening because I said your name. Maybe I should use everyone's name so that people can listen to me. Guys, please, I can't use all of your names. Just listen and use the emoji keyboards. And if I'm speaking too fast, feel free to raise your hand and tell me, because I probably do speak fast. It's weird. I heard I speak fast. And yeah, okay. Let's get three main things. The first is your voice projection, the speaker's voice projection. Is the speaker's voice loud and clear enough? Could I hear them? Because there are certain speakers that go on the stage. And remembering the first thing I said, that we don't have a clear zero. There are certain speakers that will go on stage and you cannot hear them. For the life of them, you cannot hear. What are you saying? Like, we can't hear you. And in certain bits and pieces, you could not hear. And failing to hear certain phrases or certain paragraphs of that speech makes it a bit skewy and very weird and problematic for you as an adjudicator to judge. So voice projection falls under the delivery of the speaker. This is to say, if we are in a deliberation room with Ebenezer and Ebenezer says, Harold's speech, his content was so good. And I say, I believe it probably was good, but my problem with Harold's speech is that I could not hear him because his voice was a bit too low. And Patience agrees with me. You are right. The voice was a bit low. It means then under delivery, we need to mark down Ebenezer because Ebenezer failed to be audible. We need to mark down the speaker because their voice projection was not clear and loud enough. The second is pacing. This is to say, was the speech delivered at an accurate pace? Let's talk about pace, for example. I know that I am quite a fast speaker to many. I am a fast speaker typically when I'm never so excited. I think today is because I'm excited. I'm really excited. I don't know why I'm excited. I'm seeing good things in this session. I'm just so excited. That's why I sound this way. Normally, I'll just be lazy and chilled and laid back. Anyways, let's talk about the pacing. Is this pace appropriate? Are you fast enough? Are you slow enough? Are you capturing the emotion with your pace? Let's talk about it. So because Ree is very excited today, Ree is me. I'm so excited today. That is why I'm using this pace. Probably not the most appropriate considering that this is a lesson, but I'll let you decide on that with the emojis. If this is appropriate, thumbs up. If it's not, thumbs down. Either way, I don't care. I'm still going to use it because I'm excited. Great. So was the excitement well shown using that voice? You like mark that, or this speech was supposed to be said, but look at me speaking about the speech in such a fast manner. The sadness is not there. We can't get the sad because you are speaking so fast paced. So these are things that you then need to consider. Okay, fine. The content of that speech was great. I loved it. I got mind gasms. Oh my gosh. I got to my mind climax. Even the voice projection was excellent. My mind reached its peak when I was listening to that. Voice projection was so powerful. But the third one we need to then consider, was that pace appropriate for that particular piece? That's also something we need to discuss as judges. This means then in your respectful tone, you would be like, no, Benjamin, I understand that the content was good. My only problem is that I think the pace the speaker used was not appropriate for that type of speech. You see how intelligent that makes you sound. And when you know stuff and you sound intelligent, you don't have to fight for attention in the deliberation room. You command attention by your ability to understand the metric by which you have to judge. This is very much important under delivery. The third key component under delivery is your body language. Does the speaker use gestures, facial expressions, and postures effectively? So take, for example, me. Literally, I'm sitting down in my parents' living room. No gesture whatsoever. The only thing I'm doing is my hand thing. You guys should see it. This hand thing is eating. Oh my gosh. So I'm doing the hand thing only. because it's so appropriate for this particular setting. But like a speaker comes on stage, they're audible, they have great content, but they stand in one place, no movement whatsoever. You need to critique that because it's part of delivery. By standing still, is it because this particular piece required this person to stand still, motionless, or is it because this person has not mastered the art of gesturing, has not mastered control over their body, over their gestures in relation to the speech? And this can only be done to the extent that the speaker understands their speech and is able to elaborate on their speech. I think this is also particularly key and important under delivery. Before I move on to the third component, do we have questions about speaker delivery and how we rank speaker delivery? Okay, I don't see any. Oh. Okay, great stuff. I don't see any questions. I don't know whether people just don't hear me or you guys just like me going on and on. I can go on and on till tomorrow if you give me the mic. I'm a public speaker. I can speak forever. So please make sure you regulate me. Great stuff. Let's move on to the third important component, which is engagement. Guys, engagement, you know, someone can have a very great speech and its content is so clear and relevant. Yes.
Right. My question is someone, okay, is it punishable when someone uses gestures that are inappropriate? Do we reduce their marks or, we ignore it? What do we do?
I'm going to need clarity on inappropriate.
Okay, let's say someone is using gestures that, to me as a judge, I look at them as, they're not necessary. Let's say they're talking about grief, and the gesture they're using probably show happiness and something like that. Do we punish them for that or?
Okay, great. That's a very good question. Because there's a mark allocated to delivery, and suppose they're saying for delivery, because I told you that most of these tournaments give you a score sheet, I'm avoiding using the score sheet I already have. So because they give you a score sheet, suppose they're saying delivery should be marked out of 30, and you feel or you saw and you are in agreement that the speaker's gestures were not particularly relevant to their piece. Out of 30, you give them, if they were so bad or they were averagely bad, you would give them a 15. If they were totally out and irrelevant out of the 30 mark, it means that they would be below the half of that 30 mark. I think this is something usually all CAP members make clear when you guys are given score sheets. This depends on the tournaments that you attend and what that structure looks like. But if there's no structure at all, these are pointers that you can use when you give a particular speaker a score. Certain tournaments will just allow you to give a score in total and say the lowest mark you can give is a 16, the highest mark you can give is a 94, and then you decide to give the speaker a 70, and then say Harold asks you, why did you give Rhea 70? You then go on to say, no, I felt Rhea's speech it had very good content, but I felt under her delivery, most of her gestures were a bit out of control and out of proportion. So then that limited me from giving her any mark above a 70. I'm not sure if this answers your question, Benjamin. Great stuff, Ben. Let's move on to the third component, which is engagement. Guys, engagement particularly encompasses two things. The first, audience interaction. Does the speaker engage with the audience? This is to say, does the speaker ask rhetorical questions? Does the speaker's speech speak to you? Or, okay, two things that I usually say to a lot of speakers. I tell them that there are two types of speeches. There are speeches where you speak to people, and there are speeches where you speak at people. Speaking to people and speaking at people are two different things. Speaking to people requires some form of engagement. It requires some form of communication, connection. And if you don't connect to people, if you don't communicate with them, if you don't have a bond or establish a sort of emotional dependency in your speech, you risk becoming unrelatable and lose marks of audience interaction or engagement. The second component of engagement is interest. Does the speech maintain audience interest throughout? Guys, I don't know if you guys have ever been to those work building meetings. I don't know, work meetings. And halfway through, you have even lost the purpose of why you are listening to this particular piece to begin with. This goes a long way in terms of interest. After you deliver your speech, or after this person delivers their speech, or midway the speech, was I still interested? Or was I just listening because we said you have to listen to the entire thing? Interest is very much important. If the speech ceases to be interesting towards the end, this is something that you can also point out under engagement to say, I felt the speech had limited engagement because it kind of lost us through the end, or so on and so forth. For most marking schemes, engagement will have, like for most marking metrics for judging, engagement will have its own column. But if it doesn't still, and they expect you to just give the total mark without any like set metric, you can still mark down a speaker and say, the reason I gave Harold a 69 is because Harold's speech lost me in terms of interest midway, and I felt I could not rank anything out of like engagement. I thought his engagement was so low because of that. What does this do? Two things. The first, during deliberation, it shows that you know what you're talking about. It signs you off as a good adjudicator because you know the jargon, guys. Oh, jargon is so much important. If you have been a debater before, the moment you get into a debate and you say 3 reasons why we rank above opening government, you are in the chat for nice things. So that's just how it works. There's a certain language that it works with your adjudicators. There's a certain language that works with cap. There's a certain language after you master it, you can listen to speeches and just be like, you know, this speech, the problem is that the engagement is low. You can literally judge speeches top of your head because you have mastered what it is about speeches you ought to be judging. That's it on engagement. I don't know if we have questions on engagement as a judging metric. I don't see any. Yeah, okay, yeah, Harold. Let me see. Patience. What happens in case? My question is, what happens in case a speaker is audible enough but isn't expressing him or herself well, in case one has inappropriate gestures? That's why all those components, my dear patients, all those components are judged separately. The chart of gestures has to do with delivery. The chart of voice projection is part of delivery as well. So if voice projection is part of delivery, pacing is part of delivery, and body language is part of delivery. So in my own manual, the one that we use for that voices tournaments, we say 10% is awarded to voice projection, 10% is awarded to pacing, and then 10% is awarded to body language. If the body language is off, it means the speaker does not have that mark. But the pacing, the projection is on point, so you need to give them full marks for that. In any case where the marking scheme or the judge metric you've been given to use at that tournament does not specify these, you can still break them down in your deliberations to say, fine, guys, under delivery, the voice projection was great. Let's give them that mark. But I still feel that their body language was not good enough, and you mark them down for that. I don't know if that answers your question, Patience. I don't know if you just do a thumbs up or a thumbs down so that I know. Great stuff. Let's then go on to, guys, the speech structure is something that you can actually also have a discussion on. Many at times, a speech is spoken and you're not yet in clear as to whether this was an introduction, this was a body, this was a conclusion, what was happening to the speech, you didn't understand which the point of climax was, whether there was a point of climax at all, and all those other decisions. This goes into the speech structure. So the speech structure typically composes of two components. The first being organization. Is the speech well structured with a clear introduction, body, and conclusion? Can you follow through the speech? Do you get where the speech is coming from, where it's going, how it's breaking down into components? This has to do with the speech structure. Believe you me, there are certain speakers that can sound so good. So good. They are audible, the content is great, but the speech is all over the place. You need to then say, oh my gosh, this was a 90s speech had it not been for this structure, which was all over the place, and then mark them down for the speech structure, right? On organization. The second is transition. Are transitions between points smooth and logical? Fine, we get the story starts off as you as a happy young lady before the mafia comes to your town, and steals all your livestock. We want to get the transition from when you were happy as a speaker to when the mafia comes to your village and takes all the livestock. Is that transition smooth enough? Can we get that you were happy one time and said the next? That sort of transition is particularly important, I would say, when it comes to speech structures, because a lot of debaters, a lot of speakers get caught in between these transitions and fail to be articulate, and it becomes particularly problematic. So I think that's also another important discussion. The final component, guys, I don't know why in most instances this component has very few marks. I think for me, it's one that I was forced when I wrote this manual. To put very low marks for it. It's originality. Two things here, creativity and personal touch. Does the speaker present unique ideas or perspectives? The second, does the speaker incorporate personal experiences or stories effectively? Let's talk about the first component. A lot of speakers get caught within the cycle of taking ChatGPT and recreating it. And for the life of me, this is something I hate so much. I think this is why I stopped adjudicating, because I hate with a passion speakers that are not creative, speakers that do not present their own perspective within their pieces, because this is particularly problematic and it's just not creative. It's so bland and boring. The second component is personal touch. How able are you, I've since avoided personal chats when I give my speeches. That's why I liked what Harold did. Harold gave me a whole personal feeling like, oh my gosh, Ree is so amazing. She's the best thing ever. We want to get that personal touch in speaker speeches. If it doesn't give us that, then it means maybe that personal touch should not have been there in the first place. There are certain speakers that will come up and start telling us things such as, oh my gosh, I lost my... Oh, guys, this is a trigger warning. I lost my parents when I was 5. But then you see that this is a very sad story. But I don't get why you had to bring up your deceased parents. Was it to garner sympathy? Was it in any way relevant to your topic? And if it wasn't, then it's just wasting breath. And it makes the whole speech particularly terrible, especially in originality. So you can have that chat when it comes to originality. I think that sums up all the metrics that we use in as far as judging judging public speaking speeches. Do we have questions pertaining the metric before I move on to the next component? I don't see any questions in the messages. Okay. I concur that everyone, I can move on to the next aspect. Now, the next beautiful aspect that we're going to move on to, guys, I'm not going to talk about speaker scoring metric because every tournament is unique. Certain tournaments say the lowest mark you can give someone is a 50, the highest is 100, and they just walk you through that. So they just walk you through what a speech that ranges in the 50s means, what a speech that ranges in the 80s means. Every tournament has its own range. So I'm not going to go into details with that. I'm going to then speak about the next most valuable component. Remember, I was telling you about being human beings and talking to other people nicely during deliberations. You need to also be in a position to give speaker feedback. Let's talk about giving speaker feedback. Okay, so tournaments vary from giving speaker feedback after the round, like personal individual feedback after the round, to giving speaker feedback in a generic form, like maybe OA, like what they do in debate, like after the round and after you guys are done with your scorings and whatnot, you come back to the room and you tell people in public what they could have done right. So I'm going to address these two separately. Let's talk firstly about giving speaker feedback in the generic manner. The generic manner refers to you getting into a room that has all 8 speakers that were part of that round and you giving that feedback. When you have to give feedback in a generic setup, the first thing to remember is to not oust and call out people. Don't be like, oh my gosh, you guys were all good except for Patience. The problem that I didn't like from Patience's speech was ABCD. Firstly, speakers don't like that. The second, it's just not nice. The third, yeah, it's really just not nice. So refrain from calling out or highlighting certain speaker names, specifying them. Make your feedback or OA very general. This is to say, guys, this was a generally above average room. I think we can improve in terms of our delivery. We could try to control our pace better. We could also just try to be more audible, especially when the judges can clear. There are 2 things that you do when you start pointing names. One, you destroy the speaker's general morale, or I don't know, their general feel as a human being is destroyed. Because what do you mean all the speeches were good except this speech, and you're saying it in public? It's so wrong. I think that's just the very reason, because public speaking is such an individual sport. We don't have rankings after rounds. We don't do that because we don't want to tell Harold that his speech was so sucky. We don't want to do that. We don't want to demoralize him. So make sure that when you have to give feedback in the general room, you remain as generic as possible whilst pointing out general things that you saw within the room that could be done better, using the jargon that we already gave you as part of the metric, things such as your engagement and all those things. I think this is going to be very much important. Make sure again that in the room, your speaker feedback or your feedback or oral adjudication feedback remains to the stipulated time. So if we said, oh my gosh, we're going to give our feedback for 10 minutes, make sure that you remain within those 10 minutes. The only reason why you would go above 10 minutes is because you've started saying people's names and saying, oh, Benjamin was so terrible. Because if you avoid using people's names, you see that the time allocated for OA is more than enough and you can manage. That's for general feedback. The second type of feedback is giving speakers feedback, like giving an individual speaker feedback, like me going into your DMs and being like, hi, Patience, my name is Ree, I was a speaker in your room. If it's a physical tournament, me coming to you physically and be like, I need feedback for this particular round. How do you handle that speaker feedback? The first thing you need to do, remember, you need to first highlight what the speaker did well. I'm telling you, no matter how terrible the speech was, there's something that the speaker did well. And that's where you're going to start. all your patience. I felt your delivery was very good. You are so audible and you are able to engage with the audience well. However, I think when it comes to content, you were slaking a bit. This is how you structure every feedback when it comes to speakers. Make sure that you start with the things the speakers did well, moving to the things the speakers did not do well. It makes the speakers see you in a different light. It makes human beings see you in a different light anyways. It's a very good manipulative tactic. So make sure that you remember that. The second thing is you need to be very specific on points where you think the speaker did not shine at. Make reference to their speech so that they know that you were listening. So after this meeting, Harold would say, Ree, when you were talking about speaker engagement, I think you did very well, but also I think a lot of people that were listening had problems with ABCD. This makes me think, oh, Harold heard when I spoke about speaker engagement. This is important, guys. I've heard times when speakers would say, oh my gosh, I was given a 69. When I went to ask for feedback, this judge did not even know what my speech was about. And they blame the judge because they say the judge was not listening. They blame the judge because they say the judge was not listening. In most instances, it's not because the judge was not listening. It's because the judge failed to clearly specify to the speaker what they heard during their speech. I love it when I go to an adjudicator, especially after debate tournaments, and I ask, how was my speech? And she says, oh, your framing was particularly good, especially when you were doing ABCD. Even if I got the fourth in that round, I love it because it shows that I got the fourth that I deserved. I got the fourth even after someone was listening to me. So it's very much important to make reference to that person's speech so that you show that you were listening. Specify the points where the speaker did not shine. Make reference to those things. The third component is to make sure that you offer constructive criticisms, especially in terms of what the speaker could have done better. Constructive criticism and criticism in general are two different things. Criticism in general looks like you saying, oh my gosh, you were so bad. You are so bad. Your engagement is so bad. Your engagement is really terrible. No ways you're going to stand in front of people and sound like that. And constructive looks like you saying, your engagement with the audience is a bit problematic. Maybe if you try to include rhetorical questions, or maybe if you try to include a story in your speech to make it better, I think this could work. This is constructive criticism because it's criticism followed by a solution. You cannot for the life of you be a judge who does not know how to do a public speech or how to write a speech and think you're going to criticize others. No, sweetheart, we're not going to have Judge Judys who never went to law school. This is not how it works. That's not how it works, because if you are a Judge Judy who never learned the rhetoric, it means that you are incapacitated from offering constructive criticism. Constructive criticism only comes from people that know what the right thing is supposed to look like, or what the right thing is supposed to do. Two ways in which you can learn how the right thing is supposed to look like, or how the right thing is supposed to sound. The first, you read a lot about public speaking. The second, you actually watch public speaking videos. Listen to WIPSDC, for example, PAUDC, World. You listen to other public speakers give their speeches so that you'll be like, no, this is not engaging. The best alternative to engage with an audience is maybe provide a rhetoric question, because you have seen instances where speakers have used rhetoric questions and it works. I think this is so clear. The other component that we now want to talk about is to make sure that you maintain a supportive tone, as speakers can be frustrated and start throwing tantrums. Speakers are human beings, guys. You are in a back-to-back competitive tournament. You keep getting 60s. And the draw the speaker standings that just show that you keep getting 60s. Yet you don't have any sort of justification as to why you are getting those 60s. Speakers are human beings. They equally get frustrated. So it is very much important in the position of the judge to make sure that you maintain a supportive tone, to make sure that you sound like you care. I think we already spoke about etiquette. The last component then is to allow speakers to ask questions. Guys, a lot of judges just be like, you did this A, B, C, D so terribly. You could have done this right. And I want to ask you that, okay, so if I had included a rhetoric question in mine, would it have worked? And you just don't want to hear it because you ask me. I don't know, you just don't want to be associated with that. It comes off as rude, but also it discredits your call or your judgment as an adjudicator. So it is very much important to allow speakers to have an open dialogue with you. Of course, you will not be able to do this with all 9 speakers in a room because of time constraints, but you then need to make sure that after you give them the whole rundown of their feedback, you ask if they have any questions and you answer those questions whilst clearly stating to them your time constraint so that it doesn't become problematic. I think this is also important. I think in terms of what I'm supposed to do in sum up, let's also talk about the very final component before I give general tips, because of course, guys, I don't know if it's just me, but when I open a website, there's always that option about accepting cookies. I don't know when we're going to get those cookies because I think there's a lot of cookies I've accepted in this lifetime. So as a person, I didn't know cookies are like tips and so on and so forth. So the final thing I'm going to do at the end of my presentation is to make sure I give you those cookies that you accepted when you open this call. Let's go on to the component of a scoring metric. I think the thing to highlight here is to say scoring metrics are very specific to tournaments. They tell you 50 is the lowest mark. So what does this mean? When they give you a scoring metric to say 50 is the lowest mark you can give, usually marks proceed from the lowest marks by a margin of 5. Like by a margin of 5, it means if 50 is the lowest, then it means 55 follows, and then 60 follows, and so on and so forth. When you award a speaker the lowest mark at a tournament, because usually when they say 50 is the lowest mark, we don't expect you to give anyone a 50. When you give someone the lowest mark, it entails that this is the equivalent of a speaker who did not say anything. They literally went up on stage and fainted. And it's a very discouraging score because it discourages speakers. It is better from the lowest mark to give the lowest speaker a 55. If the lowest is 50, try to give them 5 above the lowest so that it doesn't come off as so discouraging, right? But if you do decide to give someone this sort of mark, I think you should be in a position to explain why. Yeah, you should be in a position to explain why you felt that they deserved that kind of score. The second thing I want to highlight is the highest mark. The highest permissible mark at a tournament entails 2 things. The first being, this is the best speech you've ever heard your entire life. It is the most perfect piece and it was executed so well. It's literally the best thing you've heard at this tournament so far, and you want to award it so highly. That's what it entails. The second thing it entails is that you got mindgasms when you were listening to this speech. You reached the climax of your mind because of this speech. So you should be in a position to defend both extremes, and that is particularly important. Now, before I give the cookies of my presentation, before I give away the cookies we accepted, do we have any questions for me? Please ask me questions, guys. I like questions. I deal with kids. I love questions. I live for questions.
Okay, am I audible? Yeah, okay, fine. So my question, though you've already talked about it, but it's just a question that I've been having here, and it's about evidence. What exactly does evidence look like as far as public speech? Because the text given now is honestly different. And I feel like the evidence needed therefore in the different tasks is different. So what does evidence look like when you told to look out for evidence on a particular speech?
Okay, Olivian, I'm going to take all the blame and assume it's my Zimbabwean network that is the problem. Your question was, what does giving evidence look like in the context of public speaking? The short answer to it is that evidence is very subjective when it comes to public speaking. The lengthy answer is to say, listen, in most instances, evidence can be presented as statistics, it can be presented as story, it can be presented as something extracted from a certain book. We are not there to judge whether this is true or false. We are there to judge on whether it edifies the speech or it takes away from it. If it makes the speech great, then amazing stuff. If it takes away from the speech, then we have a problem. We are not there to say, oh my gosh, they said 30% of Zimbabweans live in poverty. That's not true. The statistics is 50%. That's not what you're there for. You are there to then see whether that simple fact made that speech better, whether it took from the speech or it added to the speech. Those are the discussions we would have. Yes, I have a question from Pevin. What's up?
So my question, am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you so much. My question just falls under the category of originality, right? I think one of the aspects that you discuss under originality is uniqueness. So I am wondering, is uniqueness something you judge depending on the speakers, on what they presented versus other speakers? Like, I feel like Patience's content was more unique than what other speakers presented, or is it something you judge regarding, I've had so many people speak about music, but I've never had someone speak about music this way, or like, which one?
We use both of those metrics, Pevin. The first one is to say, this is the best possible speech that someone could have given in the context of music, and we love it. But also, you could also use it to compare whether Harold ranks above Patience. This is to say, is Harold a better speaker? Could we, like, especially in a final, can I rank Harold above Patience? And if yes, then you can use that uniqueness as a metric to say, but Harold gave us a very unique perspective of this idea that no other speaker gave us. Harold brought a leaf when Harold was talking about climate change, and I felt this was a prop that resonated with us in a unique manner. This is what Harold can do that sets him apart from other people. So this means uniqueness can be measured in both ways, especially in competitive and comparative public speaking. You need to then look at where in a position where you have to look at speakers comparatively. This usually happens for your out rounds. When you start from quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals, you need to look at debaters comparatively, or you need to look at public speakers comparatively. When you have to compare speakers, it means it becomes necessary to bring out the more components that those speakers did better than other speakers in that room for the same topic or for a different topic. I'm not sure if you answered, Pevin. Great. Other questions? Who else? Imagine liking children. Do we have another one? Yes, let's hear from you.
Thank you so much for this. So am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I was requesting for clarity on the difference between content and structure. Yes, I know structure is introduction, body, conclusion, transitions, and that's what you said, right? But I'm getting a problem with separating a body from content. Yes.
The structure pertains to how the speech is laid out, how it flows from the introduction to the body and to the conclusion. That's the first. The second, it pertains to how the speech in and of itself is arranged, right? Then the content refers to the meta in that speech, how the meta in that speech answers the topic, how the meta in that speech is relevant to the topic at hand. That's also another component of the content. But also another component of the content is to say how deep is it in terms of answering the basic questions that are posed by the topic. I think it would be necessary for judges to also take speaker exercises to actually get a topic and write on it. It would be important for you guys to also take speaker. It would be also important for us to take speaker exercises so that we know whether through those speaker exercises we are able to craft pieces. How relevant is this content to the, how relevant is the content, how relevant is the material that you produce, regardless of whether you start from introduction to conclusion. What you have said, how does it answer the topic? How relevant is it to the topic? How important and deep is it with regards to the given topic? I don't know whether that provides you with that distinction. Okay, great stuff. Other questions? Let's do questions because it's going to be important. Questions? Yes, Pavan.
Thank you again. Okay, I just really need to ask this. I know that sometimes the mark allocations really create this distinction, but I just think I need the confirmation, right? In these categories, like when you're going to rank a speaker, probably according to their content, their delivery, their organization, and originality, right? And you're going to probably have to scale them on the idea of this was a good speech, this was an average speech, or this was a poor speech, right? So what really creates like the margin in which a certain speech is going to fall? Like if a speaker ranks highly in content and delivery, they probably qualify already to be maybe a good speaker, like their marks should be in that category. Or even if their content is good and perhaps they don't have originality, then they just can't be good speakers. Like, what's the hierarchy of these metrics?
Okay, if I get your chart clearly, your question is to say if Harold's speech is original, if your speech is original, but you lack other aspects, how can I grade you? Is that your question, Pavan? So if that is the case, and if that is the question, the problem is Pavan is now out. Assuming this is the question everyone has, the question would be, if the person's structure is great, but they lack in other components, how do I grade them? This is where I was saying all tournaments usually have a specified chart to say this is how we grade content and so on and so forth. But assuming that they do not have, it means that you can put, if the highest score is 90, you can give that person a 90 and then start removing from that 90 to say, okay, fine, their best possible speech would have scored a 90, but they have a problem with their content, which is why I have to mark them down maybe to an 84. There's also a problem with engagement. Then you continuously discuss it within deliberation until you get to an appropriate score on the basis of what their piece looked like. I don't know if this answered other people's questions as well, besides Pevin, because I don't think I see Pevin on call. I mean, okay, great stuff. Let's get another one, guys, before I give you the cookies, because the cookies are so important. Ebenezer, yes.
Yes, thank you so much. So my question is about when you're starting to judge. Remember, you've not listened to other speakers, and so how are you able to determine the marks to give the first speaker? Because you're not
great.
sure if
Great. I love this one. It's a very great question. Assuming you weren't given a metric, Harold is going to share my slides. He's going to share them with you guys. You need to be writing down these things, guys, to say, fine, how was this content? When the speaker is speaking, write down notes. I think that's a very important component that I had missed. Taking notes when speakers are speaking. Let's just talk about taking notes when speakers are speaking. You need to make sure that you take down notes when speakers are speaking. How do you take down notes? Taking down notes is not writing everything a speaker is saying. Taking down notes is writing content. And then you evaluate how good Harold's content was in front of that portion. You say, content answered questions pertaining the motion. And then you move on to maybe delivery, and you say delivery, like you have it pre-written down for every speaker. So that's why I'm saying, if the tournament doesn't provide you with the sketch that they use, this can be helpful for you to use as a pre-made sketch to say, delivery, this is how Harold did. So you just say, could have done better in delivery, or maybe you write engagement, loved the engagement and use of rhetoric questions. This helps you in two ways. One, it helps you in deliberation when you're talking to other judges to say, this is how this looked like. But also, it helps you when you are now giving that speaker their feedback. It is very much important as a judge to write notes, because for the life of you, you cannot listen to 9 speakers and not have notes. Don't lie. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to these speakers. It is very much important for you to write down these notes, for you to have these conversations about this could have been done better, this was well done, and so on and so forth in conversation. I'm not sure if you still have questions here. Yeah, congratulations. Do you still have questions? Guys, you know, it's so, yes. Question.
So my other question is, in a panel discussion where we're trying to come up with a final, a deliberation for a speaker. So am I allowed to bring in parts of the speaker's words, like from their speech? Yeah.
In a panel discussion, yes. Even when you are giving feedback, yes. The only time you're not supposed to bring those components of those speeches is in instances where you are talking to, when you're giving general feedback to the room. You can't do that. Further questions? Let's take one more question. Oh, God. Yes, please. Can I have, guys, can I have another one before I deliver the cookies? You know, the cookies are the most important part of the website. We accepted cookies by virtue of joining this meeting, and today you finally get the cookies, so it's great stuff. Question? Okay, I don't see any questions. I don't know why. And you know the problem, Harold? In as much as I like kids, I know my kids hate questions, so I never ask kids questions because, next time, if I do that, next time they will not join the call. They'll be like, oh my gosh, there's that one who asks questions. So it becomes weird. So I'm not going to ask any. I trust that people who don't ask questions have understood. Let's get on to the cookie cutters. The cookies, the most important part of this. The first one is to say, guys, you are only as good as you try. So do not stop trying and experimenting with the judging criteria. It is important to sign up for tournaments and test yourselves. Like literally sign up for tournaments. Test yourself. Look at how you are doing, how you could, like, if you break in a tournament, great, but the check better. It's not just like as an adjudicator. And this is particularly important for your growth as a judge and your growth within the space. The second thing is you need to always be objective and open-minded. A speaker may win one tournament and lose another. Days are different. Do not be biased. I have seen examples of certain speakers that have won certain tournaments. After winning those tournaments, they can't lose at any tournament because we are like, oh my gosh, this is Ree has taught a session where I was. So because she has taught a session where I was, it means that because she has taught a session where I was as a novice judge, it means that she is going to win. That's not how public speaking works. That's not how public speaking works. So it is very much important to refrain from those personal biases, right? So always be objective and open-minded. The third thing, manage rooms and times wisely. I think I cannot express enough to how you can be such a good judge who understands all the criteria of the manual, but fail to manage rooms. And by virtue of failing to manage rooms, you fail to communicate. You fail to communicate with those speakers, right? Yeah, that's a very important key. The third cookie is be open to questions from participants. Be open to questions from participants. I think I've already given this clarity about being open to being open for questions from participants. The other cookie is that it's not a competition and it's okay to be in the minority and it's okay for you to split. Like guys, it's okay to even after other judges have spoken, you are still not convinced and you agree that, oh my gosh, I heard your arguments about this particular speaker, but I'm still not convinced. I think it's important for you to split, keep your integrity. It's fine. It's not a competition. It's fine. It's not a competition. You can split. You can be in the minority. It's not bad. The final cookie. We love public speaking. So I love the fact that you guys have showed up. I love the fact that you guys have come up and you love being, oh, okay. I'm so sorry. I am in a shared house. By virtue of being in a shared house, I can't control all the noise. I said you need to all right. I said you need to always be objective and open-minded. A speaker may win one tournament and may lose another tournament. So you shouldn't be biased, but also you should make sure that you manage times and rooms wisely. And I also said that you need to be open to being in the minority and splitting. It's fine for your vote to split. You don't have to sell your integrity and be a Judas because you want to kiss A and be liked and break. That's not how it works. The final thing is we love public speaking. And it is so important to me. I love the fact that you guys showed up and I love the fact that you guys want to learn. I know that probably the knowledge I've given is not enough. And I know it's not enough because literally an hour, 30-minute session cannot provide so much insight that you need to grow. And I'm willing to have another support session and come back and equally have this discussion again and see how far we have come, because this is referring to novice judges. I want to see you guys after you've participated at your first tournament, even if you don't break, there's a certain level of exposure that you will have that will be so much important for us to discuss on. That said, I want to say register for any public speaking tournament. Go and judge. Even if you don't break, you will come back with insight. We are providing a culture within the public speaking space that allows judges to give each other feedback. That's why I said, even after the round, make sure that you go back to your judge. If you are not sharing, make sure that you go back to the chair and ask the chair what you could have done better and how you were doing on panel. I think that's the final cookie that I want to give you guys. Keep on growing. We love the sports. Thank you so much for having me. This was so wonderful. I don't know, guys. I was so excited about this session from beginning until now. I'm still so much excited. Thank you so much to Debate Institute Africa and Harold and the Indian community for supporting me. I'm joking, guys. And the Southern African community for supporting me. Thank you.
Yes, Harold, I'm on call. Yes, I've seen my DM.
Okay, great stuff. Managing rooms wisely entails, firstly, calling the room to order when you get into the room. If it's a physical tournament, it means that no monkey business is happening. during the course of people giving their speeches. The second one means that you allocate your time wisely in deliberations. You allocate your time wisely when giving feedback, but also it just entails that no speakers or our observers are doing funny businesses during the course of other people's speeches. I think that's the gist of it. I'm not sure if there's an extension or you don't understand anything further. You can unmute and ask.
Hi everyone, I'm Harold. Am I audible enough? Okay, so hi everyone. Once again, my name is Amaya Letitia Hadija, as Harold has introduced me. First of all, I would want to say a very huge thank you to Ree for this ceremony. Sorry, for the training session that we had today. Thank you so much. I hope it has impacted all the others that have been on the call. Me, as Harold has said, I'm still growing in the public speaking circuit, and I have actually got something. I've actually learned a lot from the training session today, and I want to say that everyone has learned something from today's training session. I want to say thank you so much, and I think we're going to talk to Harold to bring you back, because the 30 minutes, we just wanted, even 2 hours would be good just to hear you say all that. Yeah, 2 hours would be really good. Yeah, so we can talk Harold to bring you back in the next training session. Even tomorrow can work. We shall all be on board. Just tell us the time. We shall be there. Yeah. Thank you so much. And for all those that have attended today's session, thank you for making it. I know some of you have busy schedules, some of you have things to do, but the fact that you've put them aside to come and attend today's session is really great. I want to say thank you so much. And to all those that have attended, thank you so much once again. And I want to say good night to you all. Please take care. Please be safe. Yeah.
I swear Harold makes me keep talking because he still isn't convinced I am African. Guys, I am African. I am very much black. I sound nothing like an Indian. And I don't have anything else to say. I loved the session. Let's meet again next time. Great stuff.